Well, hello. So, if you're tuning into this video, you have made it through to Thursday or day 4. We're on day 4. So, if you haven't done day 3 and day 2 and day 1, please go back. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to read the foreword and I'm going to give you some information about vocabulary. So, those of you who don't want to listen to me read the foreword, you can go and read it on your own and answer the questions. So, you will be getting a sheet that looks like this, and that has vocabulary on it. And in fact, I suppose I can just screen share. Let's screen share and show you. Screen share. Da-da-da. Okay, so let's go to Google. I gotta move little things up here so I can see. Kabam. And I'm going to go to my drive and I'm going to show you how the quizzes for the vocabulary are broken down. I'm going to make Quizlet studies available to you. Those of you who have had me in the past and you know where those are, you just are going to my blog page and I will have a Quizlet link up there for you. For test number 1 will be the foreword, chapter 1, chapter 2, these 5 words. The second quiz for vocab will be over chapter 3, chapter 4, chapter 5. And then the third one will be chapter 6, chapter 7, chapter 8, and the last one will be chapter 9 and 10. There will also be some questions that go along with the story that they'll be like quizzes as well that you'll have to answer. But if you're wanting to grab this sheet and keep it as a document for yourself to study from, you can add synonyms in here if you want, but you just have this page. It is your choice whether to add information to this or not. I am not requiring it. If we were in the classroom, I would be, but it does break down how the quizzes are going to be given, and it's good study, okay, you guys, to go and find a synonym to add in on this line. You can also see the page number where those words are located, so if you're reading along on your own and you have this up, that way you know to pay attention to what that word is, because if you're not reading along with us, we're not discussing it, or you're not listening to discussion. Okay, so I want to read the foreword today. And I have my Kindle out here and I'm going to go ahead and go forward to the foreword. Here we go. So those of you who don't want to listen to it, you can just move on. Okay. I'm going to move this up so this little window is out of my way. Okay. War is always, in all ways, appalling. Lives are stopped in youth, worlds are ended, and even for those who survive, and the vast majority of soldiers who go to war do survive, the mental damage done is often permanent. What they have seen and been forced to do is frequently so horrific and devastating that it simply cannot be tolerated by the human psyche. Now, there is an attempt to understand this form of injury and deal with it. It is called post-traumatic stress disorder, which is one of your vocab words, by those who try to cure it. Okay, so there's an attempt to understand this form of injury and deal with it. It's called post-traumatic stress disorder by those who try to cure it. They give it a technical name in the attempt to make something almost incomprehensible understandable, in the hope that by doing this, they will make it curable. But in other times, in other wars, they use more descriptive terms. In the Second World War, the mental damage was called battle fatigue, and there were rudimentary efforts to help the victims. These usually involved bed rest and the use of sedatives or other drugs. In the First World War, it was called shell shock, based on the damage done by the overwhelming use for the first time in modern war of artillery fire against soldiers in stationary positions or trenches. The concussion of exploding incoming rounds, thousands upon thousands of them, often left men deaf and dazed, many of them with a symptom called the 1,000-yard stare. The afflicted were essentially not helped at all and simply sent home for their families to care for. Most were irrational. Many were in a vegetative state. In the Civil War, the syndrome was generally not recognized at all. while the same horrors existed as those in modern war. In some ways, they were even worse because the technological aspect of war was being born then. The wholesale killing by men using raw firepower was so new and misunderstood. The same young men were fed into the madness, but in those days, there was no scientific knowledge of mental disorders, and no effort was made to help the men who were damaged. Some men came through combat unscathed, meaning they were just fine. They went on like normal. Most did not. These men, the ones that did not, were somehow different from other men. They were said to have soldier's heart. So do we have a special name for the effects of war on soldiers now? I don't know, do we? Men that are hurt in any of our Gulf wars and they come back and they're messed up? What sort of damage or exposure do soldiers sustain now that they didn't during all of the other wars? So those are things to think about. I know that when I hear that during First World War, it was shell shock, but during Second World War, it was battle fatigue. When they're talking about shell shock and being in the trenches and there being artillery fire and exploding rounds and things being so loud, that's also happening in the Civil War. It's also happening in other wars. But now with our men in the Gulf Wars or in Iraq, I know that oftentimes, even when they're in, heavy duty equipment and in their vehicles, if an AEID goes off, which is an explosion, they're oftentimes damaged on the inside, even though you don't see it on the outside because of the percussion effects. They also come home with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So there are going to be a couple questions for you to answer. So pay attention to the work on the site and what it tells you to do. So click on it, answer the questions based on this, the forward. Okay, you guys, I'm going to stop share here. I know this is weird and I'll get in the hang of it, but I'm trying to speedily do this for you for this week. And again, don't forget to go back to the beginning if you have not started with number 1. So bye, you guys.